As a religious and cultural tradition of Sicilian immigrants, the ritual of St. Joseph's altars continues as an expression of thanksgiving and praise.
The custom in St. Joseph is not only for Sicilians, but only Sicilians celebrate it in that fashion, so big.
The ritual is an elaborate devotion to art, history, religion, and philosophy, which began as a part of a Roman Catholic holiday known as the Feast of St. Joseph. The tradition focuses on feeding the hungry and thanksgiving for deliverance from famine. The long-standing tradition dates back to the Middle Ages. Celebrated on March 19th, the Feast of St. Joseph was established as a tribute to the patron saint for deliverance from famine. In other parts of America, the tradition is known as St. Joseph's Tables, but in New Orleans, it is formally referred to as St. Joseph's Altars.
It happened in Sicily many years ago. There was a terrific famine, drought, and all they had was these fava beans, and in their petitions to St. Joseph, they planted these, and these beans grew under the conditions that they had, and it fed these villages throughout Sicily.
The religious custom came to America at the beginning of the 20th century as waves of Sicilian immigrants flooded into New Orleans. By the end of the 19th century, 40% of Louisiana's population was Italian, with most of them from Sicily. The French Quarter itself was 90% Sicilian, as French speakers were overwhelmed by Italian immigrants. To this day, St. Joseph's altars can be found in homes, churches, community centers, courtyards, and even garages throughout the city. Following the pre-Lenten celebration of Mardi Gras, the feast has been assimilated into a variety of cultures throughout the New Orleans area. While still predominantly an Italian-American celebration, altars can be found in many communities. The festival itself has become much more than a religious holiday. In fact, the celebration feeds the needy of all cultural groups without regard to religion, race, or ethnicity. However, as this became assimilated into modern culture and society, the traditions and symbolism of the ritual have not been lost. In the months that precede the feast day, volunteers are busy preparing the breads, pastries, and dishes that will adorn the altar. Preparation begins as early as January as local bakeries and grocery stores contribute materials that will become the offerings on the altars. On the eve of the feast day, a procession and blessing are made in preparation of the holy day. Before Before the altars are open for viewing, the ritual of the saints known as Tupa Tupa, or Knock Knock, is performed in a reenactment of the Holy Family's search for food and shelter. A child dressed as an angel knocks at 2 doors only to be turned away. At a 3rd door, the family is allowed entry. It is after this ritual that the public is permitted to join in the feast. On the day of the feast, countless people will stream past the altars to view the elaborate items and to make prayer petitions to St. Joseph. On some altars, there is even a bowl where written petitions can be placed. It is believed that these petitions will be honored by St. Joseph if there has been effort and charity on the part of the petitioner. Many altars will have pictures of deceased or sick relatives. The requests themselves vary and include the recovery from illness, conception of a child, success in business, and more recently, for the recovery efforts after Hurricane Katrina. Another important part of dedicating an altar is feeding the hungry. Several of the larger altars feed thousands of visitors on the feast day. The meal consists of meatless dishes such as pasta and red sauce, or red gravy as it is known in New Orleans.
Right now I'm making what we call a haystack to put on the altar to represent the spaghetti that we serve to the people with the gravy, what they call them. And St. Joseph altar is not supposed to have any meat on it. And about 20 to 25 ladies and men have gotten together since January to make all the cookies that you see on the altar. And we had some ladies from Marrero and Harvey to come make the decorative pieces like the cross and the hearts and things like that.
But it's an honor to be able to work on an altar and do that, because we help and give back for the blessings that we have received too. And then by feeding the poor, it really is. It just touches your heart and you just want to do it over and over again. It gives you so much joy to give and to do that. I don't know, it's effortless.
Plus, for some of us, it's a connection to our,
roots.
Past, our roots.
Although the size of the altar is not as important as the devotion to St. Joseph, several altars have flourished over the years. St. Joseph Church in Gretna is one prominent example, as is the Italian-American Society of Jefferson and Women's Auxiliary. Just blocks from each other in Gretna on the west bank of New Orleans, these altars share strong religious and cultural ties to the ritual, as well as dedication to the community. As part of the elaborate celebration, bread, fruit, vegetables, and fish are prepared for consumption as well as for their ritual symbolism. Italian cookies are also a prominent feature of the altar. These include sesame and fig cookies. The fig cakes are formed into intricate religious symbols resembling chalices, hearts, crosses, fish, and other holy relics. As visitors enter the parlor, they are presented with a gift bag that usually includes cookies prepared for the altar. Additional items include a piece of Italian bread, a fava bean, and a prayer card.
Sure, we try and make as many bags as we can before the altar. We try and make at least 4,000 bags. And we put 7 cookies in a bag along with pinuladas, a prayer card, and bread, which will all be blessed, and each person that comes to the altar gets to take a bag of cookies home with them. When we run out of bags of cookies that day, Emily and the crew start breaking down the altar and taking cookies off the altar, that we then make more bags to be sure that everybody gets a bag of cookies to bring home with them.
The most important thing is that fava bean that goes into that bag. people look for that because it's a blessed bean that they carry with them for good luck. And that's the thing they look for, the bean and the blessed bread.
The fava bean, also known as the lucky bean, is another important symbol represented on the altar. According to legend, the fava bean was the one crop that survived famine in Sicily. At some altars there are fava plants, but more common are the dried beans in bowls. As the ritual has adapted and translated to American culture, the lucky bean now represents success and financial security. Carrying a lucky bean in your pocket or purse ensures that you will always have money. This belief is so pervasive that some altars gild or paint the fava beans gold.
The history of the fava bean, which some people call the lucky bean, is that was the only crop that did grow during the famine, so that helped them survive, and so they kind of made that as a symbol.
The bread is blessed and is saved for deliverance from famine, floods, and storms. In one tradition, during bad weather, the holy bread is thrown outside and is believed to deliver families from disaster. The Italian breads are shaped into large braided loaves. Others are shaped into symbols including crosses, fish, and wreaths. The symbol of the fish is one of the most prevalent on the altar. In addition to symbolizing the Christian faith, the fish also represents the Catholic abstention from meat during Lent. In addition, the many fish dishes and baked goods in the form of fish have come to represent the Sicilian fishermen who were the first to build altars in celebration of St. Joseph. Traditionally, altars are constructed with 3 tiers or levels. Small or large, they are usually in the shape of a cross with the 3 levels symbolizing the Holy Trinity. At the lower levels, the altar is adorned with food, candles, wine, statues of saints and the Virgin Mary, and pictures of deceased relatives or loved ones in need. On the upper tiers, flowers and relics are placed at the foot of the statue of St. Joseph, who is often holding the baby Jesus. The decision to prepare altars with food is very unique. An altar serves as a place where one would offer prayers to God, and using it for the placement of food demonstrates thanksgiving to God for His mercy and deliverance.
So one can ask the saints for a favor, just as one can ask a friend for a favor. And since death is not a boundary for which prayers can't cross, one can ask a saint for a favor, for a request of some kind, just as one might ask a friend. Now, the important thing of it is that these are close to friendship relationships. This is not a worshiping as an idol. No doubt that there are some superstitious or pre-Christian ideas intermingled with some of the Christian ideas in the practice of various Christian peoples around the world. But in this particular context, it's important to understand the closeness with which the devotee has to the saint. For the Albanian, formerly Albanians, now Sicilian, living in 2 or 3 score of Sicilian villages, a special relationship emerged around St. Joseph as a protector. Just as St. Joseph protected the Holy Family, St. Joseph is called upon to protect the individual in whatever trials and tribulations he or she faces.
Since the Feast of St. Joseph has been greatly expanded, its historical, philosophical, religious, social, and artistic elements have engaged the national awareness. It is part of the rich immigrant history and tradition that have shaped the American cultural landscape, both in New Orleans and throughout the nation.
Another thing, like Mary had said, we give it to the ill. The food that is served to the Holy Family, what's left over, you give it to people that are ill. There's a special blessing that goes with that for the people that are ill. And you ask Jesus to intercede to God, pray to God our Father for healing. People that have cancer and other illnesses, old people. And we've gotten so many blessings from that.